All right. So we're in here. It's been a while. I know you guys have missed us. I know people copying our content have missed us. This is Trump and the G. Um, Trump to Alvin Bragg. You got to bring ass to get ass. And we titled Trump and the G. Most people talk about the economy. Very seldom do we actually talk about issues specific to Trump. It's kind of odd given that he's not in office anymore. But it seems like he stays in the media, and he's always in the media for something. And I'm sure the media likes it because it generates ratings, generates clicks, and so on and so forth. Too bad Don Lemon had already got put on the morning show, on the morning news, before these recent news events surrounding Trump, because he was living off Trump after Trump. After Biden won, there was still a lot of content about Trump, but there was a lull there, and I think a lot of people in the corporate media with no real news suffered, and Don Lemon was probably one of the most high-profile fallouts from having nothing to report on pursuant to Trump and having to report real news. But anyway, so as far as the economy is concerned, it's the same old as far as I'm concerned. Retail sales for the month of March fell like 1%, but that's to be expected in my opinion because, when people, fear they can't pay for rent or buy food, are they really going to buy new clothes? Think about it. Consumer confidence isn't the strongest. So I think, let's just going back to school, I think retail sales are going to remain dismal. I think they're moving. I think a lot of retailers are moving product, but they may not be selling it. If you think about it, because you see like a lot of high-profile exits from certain urban areas, like Target, Walmart, saying they're leaving certain cities. They're leaving certain downtown areas because it's just not profitable for them. People stealing stuff, a lot of theft, a lot of probably have to have heightened security. Just not economically viable for them to have stores in certain areas that can't make money. I think I know with Walmart and Target who just left Chicago, and people in Chicago are complaining, but you just can't have people stealing clothes or stealing products in mass and not expect the retailer to do something about it. So it shows you how bad the economy really is, where, the thing about Target was that it had so many locations in urban areas that, in densely populated areas, they could actually sell a lot of product and actually use these physical stores as fulfillment centers for their online sales. So they're selling stuff online and using the stores as fulfillment center where people can come in and shop, buy online, and pick up in store. That was one of the selling points for Target, and everybody else wanted to replicate that model, and now they're leaving. And Walmart and Target said, we're going to leave these downtown areas. That shows you how bad the economy is, because for years they were trying to crack these areas and trying to get a foothold into these areas. So it shows you how bad the economy really is. The people just stealing stuff, and there's too much crime and too much violence and too much. It's too costly to keep these stores there, and it hurts a lot of consumers because now you have maybe elderly people who have to drive out to the suburbs to get food or what have you, or buy good for goods and services that they could get near their home. So now it causes a lot of angst for certain consumers who have to drive out to the suburbs, maybe don't have a car, so on and so forth. So it made it a lot less convenient for especially a lot of African Americans in these inner cities. Last time we talked, I think it was the Silicon Valley Bank had failed. So now there's a question mark whether who's the next bank that's going to fail. And so that's a red flag, because the banks are making loans against overvalued assets, and one of the biggest assets that drive the economy is housing. So they've made a lot of mortgages for overvalued houses, and can they really make money on mortgages now? That's the question. For companies like maybe Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, who may not hold these mortgages, that may not be a big deal. A lot of times they act like distributors, where they make a mortgage and then sell down. But for traditional banks who want to hold these mortgages, that may become an issue. So I think that's something to look at. Can banks continue to make loans against overvalued assets? Because as we saw with Silicon Valley Bank, the assets fall, given rising interest rates, it could cause some type of stress on their balance sheets and their capital ratios, and requires them to raise more capital, so on and so forth. And then the deposits get there. Now you have Apple, who wants to offer deposits, and that may cause dislocation for more banks, where deposits may lead to companies like Apple, other companies, non-traditional banks, to put their deposits other places. So this type of disintermediation could continue, and it could cause stress for banks, and it could cause stress for the economy as far as banks pulling back on lending. So that's sort of my high-level take on the economy.
No, I mean, you bring up, a number of good points. I mean, overall, it's feeling like we're back at kind of the cusp of 2020 and 2021, where we were seeing just the stress across the economy and into households where people are being pushed against a wall. People were losing their jobs at unprecedented rates. At that point, I think maybe two stimulus checks had went out, largely. Even if folks got the entire, I believe, 1,400, it was at the time. What about the other 10 months worth of groceries, bills, payments that have gone unpaid? And if you were not, sitting on kind of a pile of cash from savings or 401k, which even the 401k at that time was getting decimated, because, for most folks, 401k is not something that is within the employee's control. It's something that's within the employer's control. So it net benefits the employer. So you just had to either pull your cash out and stand idly by while, kind of the rest of the market crash, and watch your money that you did pull out. And if you're before age 59 and a half, you're getting penalized, plus you got to pay income tax on the money that you did pull out. So even the money that you did pull out can get reduced up to 40, 50, and sometimes up to 60%. In purchasing power, it's reduced by. So in other words, the culmination of all of those factors, even for the folks that did have that as an option, is pushing them against the wall. And folks, when they're pushed against a wall in an economy where the Fed was handing out $80 billion a month to their friends and to their donors every single month since 2009, 2010, and you, as one of the non-friends, didn't get to see any of that. Well, you were just being kind of subjected to zero interest rate, to free cash, would kind of resemble the Roaring '20s, but largely most folks were not able to take part in it. So you didn't have this pile of cash to tap into during this economic winter. And if you have mouths to feed and you're barely able to, put a roof over your head already, and now the market is being stress tested, which means that you no longer have those same options financially, well, people are being pushed to actions that they wouldn't otherwise be pushed to. And it's not to, kind of make any excuses for any individual decisions, but we do have to understand that even on a larger scale, that all of these factors don't just exist in a silo. And, talking about the economy at, with economists and within mainstream media, become just kind of talking points. The thing that we often forget is the folks that are often the talking heads about such issues are not facing the same issues that they are discussing. They are not in the same boat as 95% of the population, and certainly not a good majority of the population that is listening to those mainstream outlets. So they are not in your boat, especially when you have. I think we were just talking about it earlier today. When the Fed, one of the members of the San Francisco Fed, on the question of, and this was back in either 2020 or 2021, when interest rates were uh, being pushed up, on the question of how are folks supposed to survive these, at that point, corporate price gouging at the pump, corporate price gouging in the food aisles, corporate price gouging at the consumer goods level. How are people supposed to survive? And her kind of quippish response was, people will be okay. That, she's doing okay. This isn't, a tough time for her. And, just the cognitive dissonance. And this is a member of the Fed. And, when they published her income, that she's bringing in $450,000 a year annually. Well, that alone puts her in top 5% of income earners in the country. So, in other words, there's a large Grand Canyon size gulf between kind of the haves and the have-nots, and even the understanding of from the position of the folks that are talking about these things, talking about the economy, talking about the effects and impact of interest rates, and certainly policymakers that are um, contributing to this fiscal environment. They are not in the same boat. So quite often, there is no sympathy. There is no empathy for regular households, folks that are working class that still need to make ends meet by going to work on a day-to-day basis. So while the stock market over 2021 experienced a kind of a bull market, and we went through 2022 and had a sharp downturn, a market correction, rightfully so, and seeing the continuation of that downturn into 2023. For a brief moment, there seemed to be some leveling out. We, began to see some ease at the pump within, I think, the last really maybe 4 or 5 months since the top of the year. We began to see some of the food prices begin to reduce closer to 2020 levels. Um, as far as individual food items. So we began to see some leveling out and what seemed like some kind of overall relief. The job market was running hot for a little bit, and it seemed like maybe we're getting to a point where we're just accepting kind of the situation as it is and living with this high interest rate environment. We're still in a recessionary environment, but you can see a little bit of light, excuse me, at the end of the tunnel. And as we look at this month's jobs report, it tells you that that was a very short-lived moment. To your earlier point, we're seeing um, theft on the rise, and the thing that I pointed to then and remain as a benchmark today is the the brazenness of the crimes. Someone was, I believe it was Nike last week, where folks, literally, I think 6 or 7 people, just walked in, strolled into a Nike store and just picked up, what one would assume is, thousands of dollars worth of merchandise and walked out. And some of the staff were recording kind of the boldness of of the crime. And we're seeing this level of brazenness again, as we saw in 2020 and 2021, because we're kind of recycling the last 2 years again. Jobs, the jobs report, we see jobless claims are up. The estimate 1.8 million, 1.82 million, and we got jobless claims at 1.86 million. So even according to estimates, the market is pushing above those estimates. In other words, initial jobless claims went higher than the estimated 240,000, 245,000, which on the face of it may not seem like a big deal. It's like, oh, it's only 5,000 more jobless claims than estimated. But when you look at the overall picture of a month to month and a year to year of the jobless claims increase, given the understanding that once someone is unemployed over 6 months, they largely drop out of the picture of unemployment numbers and retention numbers, as if they just kind of go into the ether. Well, that's the issue, is because we're looking at a country which roughly a third of the population, working population, is unemployed. This is unsustainable. I mean, really, for any country. So it is a recycling of what we're seeing in the economy over the last 2 years, and people are being pushed once again to kind of to their limits, to their economic limits, to their household limits. Um, if it comes, for a lot of folks, when it comes down to breaking laws regarding theft and maybe consider grand larceny. Certainly not a lawyer, but if it comes down to that versus providing a means to put food on the table, because people are out here stealing groceries, people are out here stealing clothes. Um, basic, in other words, basic needs that are on the Maslow's hierarchy. Food, shelter, clothing. These are basic needs. And if people are out here stealing basic needs, um, I'm sure folks that are the proponents for law and order, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't have law and order, but at the same time, we cannot ignore what are the underlying causes to this. How did we get here? And how do we get to the root? And at least understand why folks are making the decisions that they are making, which most people, if given the option, would they rather be fully employed to be able to go into a store and purchase the goods? 98% of our of the folks in this country are not criminals. Um, Only a very small percentage. So, in other words, given the choice, most folks would rather be fully employed and be able to afford, the roof over their head and the clothes on their back and the food on their table. So, understanding the root of that and what has caused that, I think, is pretty vital.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. So yeah, a couple of things. The lady in San Francisco Fed, when she talked about what doesn't affect her, she said that's a mouthful because we've been talking about this stuff for a while, but the general public can't see it until it affects them. Nobody really cares until it affects them. I think we're sort of at an inflection point as the Fed is sort of removing the punch bowl, normalizing rates, and you also have costs going up at the same time. I think people are starting to see these issues affect them. He's talking about Joe Biden is now trying to figure out what to do with Social Security, which means he's kind of like it's almost like a trial balloon to the public. Say we may have to
Right.
raise the age, and they're doing it over in Paris right now, and people
Yep.
are riding. You start talking about people Social Security,
Yep.
now it starts to affect them. They don't care if you when we talk about bailouts and bad Fed policy and bad government policy, it's causing definitely is a lot of ways because they don't care what you're doing as long as it doesn't affect them. You start messing with their retirement age, that's when it starts to bother them. And you also see as far
That's
as
a good
people,
point too. It was only 2 years, a 2 year raise. I think the
right,
retirement age is 60, and they raised it to 62.
right,
And they literally burned down the Black Rock building. They took over Black Rock's building,
right.
burned it down, and Paris is still currently under full protest. So yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah, the CEO of LVMH, I think I pronounced it correctly. He's prancing around like I'm the richest person in the world. Nobody cares. You want to prance around like a peacock? Go ahead. BlackRock wants to manage 180 trillion in assets. Go right ahead. But when you start messing with people's retirement age and retirement income, that's on Social Security. That becomes a problem, especially in a country like France. Secondly, in the U.S., I mean, you got people again walking out of stores with whole bags of clothes and without even thinking about how they're going to fence the stuff. So you may walk out with X amount, but by the time you fence it, that you have some type of distribution network or system in place, you may maybe sell it for 0.25x. So what are you going to get for it with the stuff you're walking off of? You can't wear it if it's not in your size. You see, the public's telling us something. You see mass shootings going through the roof. And people down in Tennessee protesting. Lawmakers are protesting because they can't pass. They don't know how to pass laws to get some of these guns off the street. So they're protesting. You have again, we talked about drug overdose deaths are going through the roof, which we covered in a tremendous amount of detail. So the country's in pain, and the country is telling us something totally different from what the policymakers are saying. That, the runaway stimulus, driving up asset prices, doing a stagnant economy while wages are falling. Driving the stock market is good for some people, but not for everybody. And now you have, just to sort of segue to the show, that you have politicians, or so-called leaders, who either won't do anything about it or don't have the wherewithal to do anything about it. So what they rather do is put on a performance and keep the country distracted and uninformed. And so, I mean, I've known about, State Attorney General Letitia James's inquiries into Trump. Then you had this lady, Fannie Willis, who I think she's the DA of Fulton County, Georgia. She's investigating Trump and his so-called interference with the election in 2020. I don't know what he did, but, Biden won, so I'm not quite sure if his interference was effective or not. But now we have Alvin Bragg, DA of Manhattan, who has brought charges against Trump. And it came out of the clear blue sky. I haven't been paying that much attention, but it kind of seemed like the board crying wolf when you've had, since Trump got elected, the Russians did it. Russia helped Trump get elected, and he's been impeached twice. So there's a bunch of noise and saber rattling, but nothing comes out of it. So now you have Alvin Bragg, who's the Manhattan DA, saying he's going to bring charges against Trump, and the grand jury agreed there's enough evidence. It comes down to, is it a misdemeanor or is it enough for a federal crime? I looked at the actual complaint. It's just 34 counts of the exact same thing.
Right. Yeah.
Falsifying business records. And it just seems like, do we really want the former president of the United States, or maybe a current presidential candidate, to have to deal with this type of stuff? It seems like because the policymakers can't do anything else, all they can do is put on performance and create this reality TV show environment where it's just a bunch of noise and drama and pomp and circumstance and nothing behind it. So I actually went down to the courthouse today. He was, I guess, arraigned, and it was a madhouse down there. I got a little bit of footage, so I'm gonna try to share my screen of what it was like. A lot of people from around the country who were there. So,
Mm.
Audio isn't the best for some reason, but there weren't a lot of fights, but it was the people on both sides. You can hear the audio that well right there. But the guy was saying that Hillary Clinton drinks people's blood, kidnaps people, drink people's blood, and the guy was a little bit back and forth with different people. But there were people for Trump on one side, people for Hillary on another side, and there's a lot of there are probably a few thousand media people down there. I got off the subway a couple of days ago, ran down near the courthouse, and there was guys in the subway with M16s. So I don't know if Trump's coming back down there soon, but it's pretty well fortified down there in terms of trying to keep peace. But people from around the country came to have their say, whether they're for the president, against the president. I can see the president in action. So I'm going to share like a few minutes of his speech in Mar-a-Lago after he was arraigned. He pretty much says a lot of stuff that we've been saying for a while. So here goes.
Thank you very much, everybody. We have to save our country. God bless you all. God bless you all. And I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. From the beginning, the Democrats spied on me. Remember that? They attacked me with an onslaught of investigations. Russia, Russia, Russia. Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Impeachment hoax number one. Impeachment hoax number two. The illegal and unconstitutional raid on Mar-a-Lago, right here. They're lying to the FISA courts, the FBI and DOJ relentlessly pursuing constitutional changes to election laws that have not yet been the millions of votes illegally stuffed into ballot boxes and all caught on government cameras. And just recently, the FBI and DOJ in collusion with Twitter and Facebook in order not to say anything bad about the Hunter Biden laptop from hell, which exposes the Biden family as criminals and which, according to the pollsters, would have made a 17-point difference. We needed a lot less than that, like about 16.9. It would have been in our favor, not my favor, our favor, because our country is going to hell. And we remember the 51 intelligence agents who said Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. It didn't exist. It was Russian disinformation. Remember that? And that was all confirmed strongly by the FBI. We all knew that it wasn't Russian disinformation. And so much more. Our elections were like those of a third world country. And now this massive election interference at a scale never seen before in our country, beginning with the radical left, George Soros-backed prosecutor Alvin Bragg of New York, who campaigned on the fact that he would get President Trump. I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. This is a guy campaigning. You want to get President Trump at any cost, and this before he knew anything about me, didn't know a thing about me. He was campaigning. As it turns out, virtually everybody that has looked at this case, including rhinos and even hardcore Democrats, say there is no crime and that it should never.
Okay, so the end of the speech, towards the end of the speech, when you go a little further, he talks about our lack of energy independence, um, which we were on tap to have when he was president. Lack of energy independence, the sort of embarrassing exit from Afghanistan, and then he also talked about now you have countries with nuclear ambitions that weren't talking about that when he was in office. So he talks up his strongman presence when he was president, and a lot of the saber rattling, a lot of talk about nuclear ambitions from Russia and so on and so forth was not there when he was in office. So I'm going to briefly play a clip from Alvin Bragg where he's actually on record saying he's going to get Trump, and he ran on the campaign of trying to get Trump. That was his sort of campaign speech or whatever. It was his major part of his campaign for DA. Here goes.
Leading into this vote for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, I know a lot of people are wondering, whoever has this job, are they going to convict Donald Trump?
Look, that is the number one issue. We know he's investigating. And what I'll say is I was the first to announce against Cy Vance. I too have a lot of issues, which is why I decided to run. I'm the candidate in the race who has the experience with Donald Trump. I was the chief deputy in the attorney general's office. We sued the Trump administration over 100 times for the Muslim travel ban, for family separation at the border, for shenanigans with the census. So I know how to litigate with him. I also led the team that did the Trump Foundation case. So I'm ready to go wherever the facts take me and to inherit that case. And I think, it'd be hard to argue with the fact that that'd be the most important, most high profile case. And I've seen him up front and seen the lawlessness.
Okay, so this is Alvin Bragg. I hadn't known about that footage until recently, but I thought it was interesting. He's telling Ebro and Rosenberg this. But I'll let you go first so you get your reaction to Trump's his speech.
Honestly, my knee-jerk reaction is disgusted. Like I'm just exhausted. um, not removing the cult of personality that at this point becomes par for the course when we're talking about Trump. Anytime that he has a camera in front of him, Trump is going to Trump, right? However, some of the points that he brought up were valid points. Is I guess it's just all so much. Like I said, it's daunting. It's just daunting because it's like a circus for the goofy, where you have politicians, lawmakers, media pundits, all jumping on this bandwagon of attention. It's all attention seeking. Meanwhile, over that same course of time, the U.S. has quietly entered into war with Russia and China. Our resources are being constrained. There is very little light at the end of the tunnel. For all the reasons that we just talked about, right? That people are being pushed to their absolute limits. And the circus antics on both sides, on Trump's side, on the Democrat side, on Republican side, and it's just daunting. Is like folks got to be tired. Like, they just got to be tired of the BS. It's like, you have Bragg one end going to a a radio show that is primarily targeted for a black audience, Ebro in the morning. And when you look at local elections, the turnout, so if you look at exit polls, kind of the turnout, unfortunately, already has a lower voter turnout than most national elections. And to me, it's clear that why is the DA showing up on Ebro in the morning? You know, why is a DA showing up on a Breakfast Club? There's really only two syndicated programs that are targeted towards the black community nationwide. And those two are it. So it's pretty clear whose support he's trying to garner. And I certainly don't knock that you want to go after your voter base. But the things that he is leading with, in what household is Trump any part of a conversation when people have lost their job? Like, what are you talking about, man? Like, what are you doing here? How much is this costing New York taxpayers? You're asking me to pay my taxes in an already high tax environment. New York is the second highest tax environment in the union. I think second to California. And you can't insure jobs. You are not in a position your position literally does not insure jobs. Your position does not bring infrastructure to the city. But yet you're talking about going after an individual that, I think, what is it, 130K or 170K was the payoff to Stormy Daniels, that all 34 counts are being you're going to spend more than that running payroll to go after this dude. How are we recouping? So you're asking New York taxpayers to look at the fact that price gouging in the food aisles, we're looking at crime increasing across Manhattan neighborhoods, Brooklyn neighborhoods, school where, it was just a couple weeks ago. Colleagues and friends of mine, 2 blocks, I think a block or two away from the school, man was shot in the head. So they ended up having right in Harlem, had to close the school down. The school went on lockdown for safety measures because it is looking like zombie land out there. Like actual zombie land on 125th, where you have over visibility of drug abuse. A lot of big box stores, as you alluded to earlier, are now shutting down because the high rate of theft no longer results in a net benefit for the store, which now means that's a loss of jobs in that same area, which now means that it lowers the tax base in that area. Now that area is subject to over policing, and yet you don't address any of that. You lead with, we're going to get Trump.
Right. And on that point though, you're talking about high food costs. Now people who have to travel to get food, you raised it, the food costs even higher, because now you have some seniors who may not be as mobile as, younger people who may have to travel 10, 20 miles to another Target or another Walmart.
Exactly. This is, like I said, it's just daunting. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, it's a complete disconnect that you're running on Democratic talking points, which again, let me just call it, it's just idiotic. It's just plain idiotic that you're going after, sure, and I'm not saying that anyone is above the law, but when we look at what is the reality, why are you in office? If it is to uphold law and order, what is your role contributing to the empowerment of the neighborhoods to strengthen and thrive those communities? Are those communities safe? You're talking about taking down a man. Last time that I looked at Trump, I don't think he was a supervillain. Is he Bane all of a sudden? Is this man running around New York City, knocking old people out, jumping from building to building, robbing everything? Like what? Like what are we talking about here? So hey, you got gun homicide rates have increased dramatically in New York City alone since 2020. Violent crimes have increased in over that same time period. It's like kids, elderly, it doesn't matter. Folks are being victimized and subject to this desperation that is running thick in the air. And all because of this type of stuff, where you have a complete disconnect. You know, a DA running on Trump talking, like, hey, brother, I just don't, again, it's just daunting. It is mind-blowing to me. It is absolutely mind-blowing to me that we have serious issues happening, irrespective of demographic, irrespective of socioeconomic status, irrespective of geolocation. You got them, at least 30 to 40% of the country out here struggling. And certainly those numbers are reflected even in New York City and the surrounding boroughs. And this is the thing that you think is important to the voter base, to the community in which you are pledging to serve. It's just like, man, it just gets, like I said, it's just disgusting. It's daunting. Folks are just tired. They're tired of the crap. And it's like, at what point, we're looking at potentially entering into World War III. What was it? The Telegraph and a few other outlets published the fact that Putin has made preparation of entering war against the UK. That they have spy ships surrounding Britain's canals as we speak. It's like, so what does that mean for the American people if we go into, like, we are one step closer to an all-out large-scale war? And it's certainly not about fear-mongering and trying to add to the fear. But at the same time, how are we talking about a single individual that, may or may not have paid off some hush money for $170,000, and people can't pay their bills? And we're talking about potentially entering into a war. We sent over $50 billion to a country that is at war to Ukraine. And yet you're talking about increasing the retirement age here in the States because Social Security doesn't have enough money. Huh? As the kids say, the math ain't mathing. How are we sending $50 billion to other folks? And let's keep it all the way real, because a lot of those folks can't stand black people. A lot of those folks that have already immigrated over here are already coming with white nationalist ideologies. This isn't speculation. It's a fact at this point.
Nazi paraphernalia and stuff like that. But you sort of use.
Right, and it's like you black people are literally paying to bring people over into this country that don't like them, that can't stand them,
But what
because we
you
don't
what you
have enough mass shooting. We
what you're
don't have
talking
enough.
about, but what you're doing is addressing the issues, though. You know what I'm saying? You're addressing the issues, which we've been trying to do all along. Where even if Trump got elected, people couldn't figure out why he got elected. We had Trump's poster on our show, and town hall meeting in Brooklyn. No black folks showed up.
Right,
So it's interesting. Trump said that his pollster said that it cost him about 17 points in the polls because
right,
the media didn't follow up on this Hunter Biden laptop, so on and so forth. And so we've had Trump's pollster on our show a few times
yeah,
and came right to the community and give information to the community how Trump got elected on the first time, and no black folks showed up. So it seemed like the public was looking for like a performance that the politicians are giving them. That don't mean you should give them a performance, but that's what they're looking for. The other thing is that the 50 billion we sent to Ukraine is 50 billion less than we sent when Trump was in office. People were afraid that he's going to get us into a war. It never happened, but now we're about to get into a war, close to a war, proxy war anyway. So Trump is saying because there's no show of strength like he had when he was in office. Now, a lot of this fear mongering, a lot of this saber rattling is popping up, especially from Russia and China that wasn't there when he was in office, and you gotta kind of admit that. As far as the DA is concerned, on the interview with Ebro and Rosenberg, he basically said I've sued Trump like 100 times or something like that. What's it got to
right.
do with
And
what's it got to do with
like it
anything?
was a bragging point. Like what?
Right. Right, I wear. He's basically repeating back to the public what he thinks they believe. If people wear FUBU, I wear FUBU too.
Right,
It's very performative because the so-called leaders and politicians either can't or won't do anything to address the economic malaise, so they give us a performance. And the whole my impression that these claims against Trump from the DA is performative. And you can't tell me. I mean, whether that if Trump wasn't running for office, these claims against Trump never been brought up. If he wasn't running for office, Alvin Bragg would never have brought charges against Trump. I don't think. So it seems like it's all political. I don't think anybody in the country, anybody around the world believes that. This sounds like something from a third world country where the leading candidate to unseat the current president is being attacked and it's being stymied on purpose by the current administration. So it all seems like it's partisan politics. And so as far as the title of the show, bring ass to get ass. Now Alvin Bragg is being attacked. His record is being attacked by people in the community. They're saying that he's not keeping people safe. He has a lot of people. He's let people out of jail. There's a lot of violent crime in his area, in his district, that he hasn't addressed. And so now his record is being challenged. Now you have Jim Jordan, who subpoenaed a guy by the name of Pomerantz, who was a special prosecutor under the Manhattan DA, who was charged to bring charges against Trump. He never brought charges. I'm saying at sort of a high level here. I think Pomerantz is saying that there was some discrepancies between how he thought the investigation should move forward with him and Alvin Bragg or whomever. And so now he's being subpoenaed by Jim Jordan and people in Washington who basically trying to get to the bottom of, is this investigation into Trump, is it a legitimate investigation, or is it just more partisan politics? And I think it'd be hard pressed for anybody to say otherwise. This looks like more politics. Looks like more the Russians did it. Let's impeach Trump just for the sake of doing it, to give our constituents the impression that we're actually doing something when we really aren't. So it's a sort of lowbrow way of keeping your constituents happy. We're going to attack Trump, but not providing any material benefits. But your donors are happy though. And so when you start talking about, policy, you kind of you kind of get drowned out by people who want to put on a performance and want to engage in this, the pomp and circumstance and the goofiness about, the next headline or the next article about Trump or next accusation about Trump. So it looks like Alvin Bragg, in a high level, also like, I don't think Alvin Bragg is doing himself any favors by going after Trump in this way. I was working in corporate America, and I remember one time where this guy, I worked in M&A, one guy wanted to buy a company, and he made a presentation to the CEO, bypassed us, and made a presentation to the CEO. It was so bad, the CEO asked us to get involved, and we actually went to meetings with this guy, and it was so he was so unprofessional and unprepared to do what he was trying to do that previously nobody knew who he was. He could stay in the company and collect their salary and nobody cared. But now, after he revealed to the CEO that he was kind of like incompetent, ended up getting himself fired. Now, Alvin Bragg, nobody knew who Alvin Bragg was or even cared. Now he's going after Trump. He's on the big stage, and now his record is being questioned. People are questioning what's his job description. Can he do it? Can he actually do his job description? No, I don't think the country wants him fencing with Trump on the national stage, and now he's being investigated or being looked askance at by the Republican Party, certain members of the Democratic Party, and now the special prosecutor is being subpoenaed in Washington. So now he's got all this attention for himself, and what's the upside? I mean, the odds of actually arresting a former sitting president slim to none. Period. The president is an institution, whether you like Trump or not.
Well, it's interesting. 2 points that in that interview that he decided to focus on and kind of drill down was the fact that this high profile, like, it's a high profile case, and ultimately kind of dug a bit deeper to evidence, well, I'm used to high profile cases. I'm used to being in this arena. Let me show you my resume. I've sued, gone after 100 times. And it really goes to show, for those that understand that game, and we've talked about it, especially in regards to Letitia James going after Trump and kind of seeing the result of that, going after Trump and even Indo, and this opioid crisis, where the ultimate name of the game for any DA worth their salt is going after high profile cases. So for those folks that don't understand, why is that important, right? Because I think most folks don't really make that connection that this isn't just another salaried employee, another salaried government employee that is a bit of a paper pusher, and whether the sun shines, whether good things happen, bad things happen, they get paid the same salary. They're going to move at the same pace. Like, this isn't the post office, folks. This ain't the DMV. In other words, but I think that kind of the connotation of those roles, especially the DA and the Attorney General, is just that these are just kind of government employees. And while they are government employees, these are folks whose entire career is predicated on visibility, politicizing this career. At some point, I'm sure historians, and certainly political historians and maybe legal historians, will know when that turning point was. I don't know when that turning point was, when these roles became more about the politics of the role and less about the actual responsibility to the constituents that role is to serve. The DA is to serve.
I guess quickly. I guess it depends on if that person wants a higher office. That could be what's triggering some of this.
But that's
that's because Letitia James ended up running for governor, right?
Correct. And then you begin to understand, like, once you understand that is the motivation to the career climb, that it is not about justice. It's about securing the bag. And for this game, securing the bag is the next higher role. So once you remove the idea that these folks are really about justice, that these folks are really about protecting the constituents of the districts that they are to serve, then it begins to make sense. Why would someone run on going after an individual public figure that didn't even have a day-to-day impact? The president in national elections does not have a day-to-day impact on the majority of American citizens' lives. The majority of elections and offices that impact our local elections, your mayors, your aldermen, your city councilmen, your sheriffs, your judges, your school board members. These are the folks that impact where your children go to school, the type of education that they're going to receive, the type of homework that they're going to bring home. These are the folks that impact the actual laws and what can I do, what can't I do. If harm is done to me, how am I going to pursue justice, and will I see the light of day of justice? These are the folks that impact those decisions, not the president of the United States. He has some impact, but very little as compared to the power that these local elections and elected officials have. So there's a complete disconnect. So to run on going after an individual that has very little impact, if you're understanding that this person is a person that is seeking justice and to protect the constituents of the districts that they serve, then it makes no sense. But when you understand that there is a political agenda because they're trying to secure the bag, and securing the bag means how many eyeballs can I get? What's the attention can I get? And that kind of brings me into the second point about the performativeness. I don't know if you know who freshman congressional member Jeff Jackson is. He's out of North Carolina. Follow him. There's no sponsorship. He hasn't paid me or anything in any way, shape, or form, or compensated me in any way, shape, or form. But I think if folks would like to at least get what I feel is a bit of a refreshing take on some of the internal machinations happening within Congress, feel free to give him a follow on TikTok. In fact, if you can hear it, I'll play a little bit just because his videos tend to run a little bit long on the longer side. But I think that his latest video really hit the nail on the head. Hopefully you can hear it. I'm going to try to turn up the volume and let me know if you can hear it.
I've only been there 100 days, and I don't know if I'm not supposed to say this out loud, but it's
Yeah, I can hear
true. And if you don't know this, you need to. It's really clear from working there for just a few months that most of the really angry voices in Congress are totally faking it. These people who have built their brands around being perpetually outraged, it's an act. I've seen a bunch of examples. Here's one. I've been in committee meetings that are open to the press and committee meetings that are closed. The same people who act like maniacs during the open meetings are suddenly calm and rational during the closed ones. Why? Because there aren't any cameras in the closed meetings, so their incentives are different. What I've seen is that members of Congress are surrounded by negative incentives. There are rewards for bad behavior. You know what the big one is? Being able to reach you. The big thing that modern media and modern politicians have learned is that if they can keep you angry, they'll hold your attention. And they both want your attention. So if you're a politician and you show certain media outlets that you can help them keep their audience angry, they'll give you their audience. And because so many politicians are willing to play that game, now they're in competition with each other to see how fake angry they can be. So that's real bad. But here's something good. What I love about this, about communicating with you directly, is that the incentives are different. They can be positive. They can be about speaking.
So okay, he continues on, essentially to say that the advantage to kind of a direct to consumer model, so to speak, as TikTok is that he's not being incentivized. So there is no there's nothing locking him in. And to my understanding, he ran on his campaign was purely funded by the people. He took zero corporate donations of any size. So even like mom and pop businesses, to my understanding. So he's not essentially beholden to any corporate organizations or otherwise. But you heard the point, right? That a lot of it is performative. So essentially, to your point, the same thing that I think at this point a lot of people understand. But it certainly makes a difference to hear it from guys like us who are on the outside looking in, and even the majority of Americans who are on the outside looking in, versus hearing it from someone. I think he's been in office, as he says in that video, for 100 days. So, he just got past his probationary period. If this were corporate America, he would finally be able to get his health care benefits for passing the 90-day probationary period. So he's fairly new. So he really has no dog in that fight, no weight on either side of the aisle, in other words. And to hear it from someone who's largely in a position to observe, makes a difference, right? That a lot of these folks are incentivized to be performative, to be angry about certain issues, to be angry about Trump, to let's get Trump, I'm going to run on Trump, although that has zero to do with New Yorkers. Like, what does Trump have to do with how people are going to be able to put food on their table? How, they shouldn't have to worry about their elderly and aging parents not being knocked out when they're trying to get to the grocery store, or getting robbed or getting stabbed. And not to say that that's the majority of activity, but does it happen within our city? 100% it happens. How many folks, look at Buffalo when they had the snowstorm. It was heartbreaking. That mother, one of the mothers, because that wasn't the only story, but one of the mothers, she was found 2 blocks from the house. Her daughters, her grandchildren were all in the house waiting for her. She decided to go out in the snowstorm because they were running out of food. And she decided to face the snowstorm, and a neighbor literally found her body frozen to death 2 blocks from the house on the street. At that point she had been missing. They hadn't heard from her, I think, like 10 hours or 14 hours. But you're talking about Trump? How, what is, what I mean? Like, it's, again, man, it just, it just gets daunting, man. It just gets real daunting. I just don't, I don't get it. I don't get, like, when are we going to be fed up?
Well, it seems like what they're doing is counterintuitive in that they're actually giving Trump more publicity, giving them free publicity to talk about national issues. They keep his name out there. You couldn't pay for this type of publicity. He couldn't afford to pay for this type of PR. Any politician
Yep.
would like to have this PR, and now nobody's talking about Ron DeSantis anymore. People totally forgot about him. He was dominating a lot of the news cycle at one point with his antics.
Right.
but
Yep.
um
Yeah.
but now it's now Trump is dominating the 24-hour news cycle. You give them free publicity. You're basically helping them with this campaign if he decides to run again. But as far as Alvin Bragg is concerned, I think about the Greek tale about the guy who flew too close to the sun and got his wings burned off.
Not Euripides, but
Right.
um,
But
what's
this
his
is
name?
what
Yeah.
can't think of his name. But this is seems what it is. This guy he wants the world stage, but it's hot up there. It's heat up on that stage, all those bright lights. And he's on a stage that Trump dominates. People like Trump, Bill Clinton, Don King dominate. And people come after Trump. They've come after Don King for years, and they're still around. And that's what this seemed like it's shaping up to be. That he's going to get the fame he's looking for. And none of it's going to change the material conditions of anybody in Manhattan where he works and where the area he covers. But at a high level, when you talk about the economy, the mass shootings, drug overdose deaths, keep the country safe. None of this has anything to do with any of those big issues that are facing the country. So that's basically it. That's Trump and the GE. You got to bring ass to get ass. And I think Alvin Bragg, anybody who's coming after Trump are going to find that out the hard way. So that's sort of my take. So that's Trump and the GE, and thanks for joining. Thank you.
Take care.